Welcome to the Mythic Life Podcast. I am your host, Eric Brumett, and I am so excited. I am here joined by my lovely wife, business partner, the mother of two of my children, and somebody that is so dear to me, Sarah Faith Brumett. Welcome to the Mythic Life Podcast, and I'm just thrilled to get into this today. It's not yet Mother's Day yet. Mother's Day was just, when this comes out, it was Mother's Day yesterday. So to all the moms out there, we hold you in our heart. And today we have a really awesome topic. We are exploring, conscious parenting, and from a theta healing perspective and from a lot of different angles, what it is to consciously raise intuitive children, to utilize healing techniques, and how beautiful that is and what some of those challenges are. And so, hello, welcome.
I'm so excited to be having this conversation with you, Eric, my dear business partner, life partner, father to our children. And I think it's going to be eye-opening and hopefully heartwarming for all of the lovely parents out there, whether you have little ones or big ones now. There's a lot to share and a lot to dive into together.
Yeah. And, I'm wondering how many of our listeners may feel this. I actually just realized a belief that I've acknowledged before. I've never actually cleared it because, we practice theta healing and we do sessions with people, and you dig into a lot of childhood memories and a lot of painful things around parents. And I realized a belief that as a parent, no matter what you do, you damage your kids.
Ooh, that's a tough one.
That's a tough one, right?
Yeah.
Like, no matter how well you parent, no matter how much you care, you're going to create a wound somewhere. And I think it's a belief, though.
I definitely think we should have a theta healing session after this and we can work on that one. So, I mean, in getting ready for this conversation, one of the things that has been coming to me, especially with our mission with Mythic Life, which is really fully breaking free of the constraints and the prescriptions and the beliefs and all of the patterning that we carry, and really live our most soulful, authentic, joyful life that we're meant to live, right? And it's no different when we become a parent. I think we all have ideas of the kind of parent that we want to be. We all carry the memories and the pains of the things that we want to do differently than our parents, because the way that they parented us maybe wasn't so conscious, right? And so, and then we get to be parents and we have the best of intentions, but we're still carrying the baggage around of all of this ancestral programming of the parent and child role. And so I feel like it's part of our mission here. It's something that I'm super passionate about. I wholeheartedly believe that if we can, and we can heal as parents, and be really in grace with being a parent and with raising our children, that we can absolutely shift the whole world. And it could take a generation. So to me, it's almost the fastest way to heal the world is by healing this relationship that we have from parent to child. And that's kind of what's living in my heart right now.
Yeah. And I mean, I remember the story. Do you want to share the story of in Game of Life, getting that reading of divine timing and having the child?
Well, so
Like,
I'll practice
this has been a big thing
yes.
of exploration for you, not just with theta, but you've studied and hosted a RIE group and conscious parenting of like, what are some of the things that you've studied that you bring in with this?
Well, I don't know if you want to go into the story, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Um,
want to hear the story.
so, I mean, I want to preface this by saying, like, when I was young and I came to New York City, I was so ambitious about my goals and about business and growing as a healer. And so I think motherhood and being a parent was really like the furthest thing from my mind. And at the time, I think it felt really separate from like, what is my life's purpose? And I remember we were all sitting in this course. It's one of the Theta Healing courses. It's called The Game of Life. And funnily enough, it focuses on business. I mean, at least that's how it originated from. So you feel like, something about my career is going to be connected to my purpose. And I will say that I think it's coming that direction. But every single one of the people that I got grouped with, we all did divine timing readings. So essentially, like the whole group of people goes up into the theta healing meditation. You access your intuitive senses. You do a reading on one person in your group. And almost every single person got the same thing, which was that part of my divine timing was becoming a mother. And this freaked me out completely. And I have to say, like, I got a little upset. Like, that's my divine timing, was like becoming a mom. Um, this is like old time. This is how we perceived women for generations and generations.
Mhm.
And so I was a little bent out of shape about it, I have to say. But something that we've talked a lot about too is a part of us can be um, pushing away from something out of fear of getting stuck with all of the labels of what that actually means and the roles that it means. And that's one of the things that we talk about this with soulmates. If we have all of these old wounds carried by our ancestors of what it meant to be a wife or what it meant to get married, and then and that equals example suppression. When we come into our womanhood and we start making our money and we start our career and we feel empowered, subconsciously a part of us will be pushing away finding a relationship
Yeah.
because we have all of these genetic associations of what they mean. So I think I didn't understand yet the power of what it means to be a parent, and how when I had our first daughter, Freya, what an initiation it was for me to actually start owning my life, um, stepping into my power, really understanding, um, I think in a way, the value of being a woman and the value of the gifts that we have to share was absolutely 100% an initiation.
Yeah. And it's something on a soul level that can be where we have the most growth is stepping into these roles. It's like, for me, our children are so incredible. They are unique, but they are also from our genetics. So there's a reflection, right? There's this element of them reminding me of myself, or them reflecting something of you. And sometimes that's beautiful and you're like embracing that and feel that closeness, but other times it can be a complete trigger. It can stir up the subconscious and create a reactivity to it, like trying to correct a behavior for them because you knew you had the same behavior and you wish that you did it differently as a child, so you want them to do it differently. And so there's all this like projection, right, onto kids and reaction, and that is the exact opposite of conscious parenting. right? So for you, when you explore conscious parenting and bringing theta healing or bringing these tools in, what do you feel would be most helpful to our listeners?
So one of the things that we learned actually in it's one of the newer theta healing classes, and it really focuses on relationships, and this class is called the inner circle, and it really gives you a deeper dive into what is subconsciously happening when we get reactive with our children. So you had a great example there around seeing a behavior that you have in yourself, like seeing that mirrored and reflected.
Yeah.
Well, oftentimes we get triggered and we actually go into what we call like an overcorrecting adult. And this is the part of ourselves that never got to explore those emotions or behaviors and be met with an adult that could actually hold space for you and help you through it. So this is where you might have an agitated or angry or aggressive response to a child who is making a lot of noise in the house, being a child and having fun, because you were never, as a child, allowed to make playful noises.
Yeah.
So this is where, like, when we can start to recognize there's actually unmet needs that we have as parents, as adults, that were never met as children. And we can actually go, and this is what we do a lot in our theta healing sessions, is we actually go and we work on these emotional, I'm going to call them traumas, right? These emotional traumas where we don't have our needs met. What happens is we can click into being overcorrecting adults. And there's it's interesting because, like, there are telltale signs of this, but if you were to look at it, you would say, oh, that these are actually kind of childlike behaviors. We talk about like complaining. I don't know about hypercriticalness. I don't think that that's a childlike behavior, but that's a sign of being an overcorrecting adult. What are other ones, Eric, that come to mind?
An overcorrecting adult. There can that criticalness really is one of the main, I think, signs of it.
Yeah.
Uh, it is that kind of harsh, sharp, reactive um, place. And, we may have aspects of that. For our listeners here, if this is something of going, oh yeah, I can be sharp and harsh, it doesn't mean you're over the top overcorrecting adult. It just means that there's a trigger where somewhere earlier in your life you may have not had a need met, and that's the thing that is explored in you and your inner circle theta healing course, is that yes, your soul is eternal and has this like divine consciousness to it that is wise and knowing, yet you come into a body and you do have a development. We are hardwired for intuition, but we also have to develop our biology, right? Our nervous system actually maps. And because of that, there's certain types of experiences, right? There's certain things that we need, things like being cherished, things like being made to feel safe. What are some of those other needs of a child?
Well, I'm just thinking also like around just being able to express and feel emotions. I think that if you notice that you're having triggers around your child's anger or your child's sassiness or your child's grumpiness or whatever it is, or maybe when your children shut down, this is also places to explore of internally maybe never been given space to actually have a healthy relationship with these emotions. So the imagination is a big one for children. I've actually worked on clients before who were traumatized from going into a school system that made them just sit at a desk all day and took away all of their play and all of their ability to be creative and imaginative. I mean, this was carried as a true abuse for this person. And really had scarred her in many ways. So the exploration of what is a childhood and allowing children to be children. This is a huge movement that is happening, I would say globally, as being globally recognized as a deep, important need, um, to for the health and well-being of our children.
Mm-hmm.
Playfulness, like all of these things.
Yeah, it's a big challenge with school systems, isn't it? Um, in general, like you can have an incredible teacher, but the systems that are put in place with the school may have expectations. And this is a big thing with the developing child is where is a healthy expectation versus what is an unnecessary pressure, like expecting them to just be an adult. Like they actually need to learn. And it makes me think of when we got our dog Sasha, right? When he was just a little puppy, like he had to learn to walk, like we have so much we have to learn and map. um it's
Exactly.
key.
I loved what you said about what is a healthy expectation versus a pressure and expecting your child to be an adult. And we do tend to hold children in many situations as a higher standard than we actually hold ourselves. So they're not allowed to get angry. They're not allowed to talk back. They're not allowed to be frustrated. They're not allowed to be jealous of their little sister. Like all these things that if we can acknowledge that as parents, they have these feelings, and how do you help them learn how to process and deal with these feelings, because feelings will come up all throughout your life, whether you're a child or an adult, without shame, without blame, is huge. And I will say that, the other aspect that's kind of coming to me is when we're stressed, when we're in a stress response, there we could call that like a type of dysregulation. Um, Children are searching for connection. And when you actually start to study what is going on in our nervous system and our child's nervous system, oftentimes, and this is what I find, especially with intuitive children, they're responding to your energy. And so I would see this with our daughter. She would pick up stress around the house, or maybe a comment or a word that was said uh earlier in the day or a day ago stays with her, and it starts affecting her mood. And so these are some of the things that when we start to recognize that our children are sensitive, are intuitive, are picking up our feelings, are picking up our emotions, are picking up the thoughts around them, um, and that it's affecting their behavior, and then we're not understanding that and getting critical of them. It can really create a harmful cycle, or I will say it could create it's a missed opportunity for healing.
Mm.
And so one of the things that I'm really passionate about is teaching parents that they can actually assist their children in growing this intuitive sensitivity in a positive way. And that we could also start to have a higher consciousness of understanding their behavior and then helping them through it. So that can be things from their diets, right? Like I always see my daughter's very sensitive to sugar, right? So immediately her energy shifts. But there's different foods, and children can have really strong reactions to these different foods. Foods with dye in them, they can have reactions to too much sugars. Um, so if we can actually tap into our knowing and our ability to um, be grounded in our own emotions and be regulated, we can then help our children. And so this is something that we talk about a lot in our practice of theta healing, that children actually heal incredibly fast. I mean, from the age of 0 to 7, they're mostly in a theta state, which means that they are able to change the reality. They're able to regulate their nervous system. They're able to heal incredibly fast. It's actually their sensitivity a lot of times to their environment that reinforces the dysfunction, right? Or the challenges, right? So how do we shift the environment? How do we as parents shift our projections onto our kids? Children are going to struggle in school if they intuitively know their teacher doesn't like them.
Mm.
So it's in one sense you can say it's a huge responsibility. In another sense, having the grace and the knowledge that your children come to you, they've chosen you for a reason, you've chosen them for a reason, and you guys are on this wild adventure and journey together, is huge.
Yeah. Um, something that I was just thinking of was how um, right now in society, there is this thing of identity and labeling, right? Like we want to understand, and everything's becoming these labels of these different neurodivergence and these like learning abilities, and even to all these gender pieces. And like, it's so challenging with that because early, especially in those first 10 years, with that developing nervous system, the nervous system is mapping. It is in a theta state doing its thing of this neuroplasticity. It's growing, it's mapping. And when it does that, it's sensory because it isn't wired yet. It actually is having a reaction called mirror neurons, where there's more of a conduit of energy than it running in its full patterning. And these kids will be like told that they're something, and it forms an identity and a belief versus recognizing that they're just processing energy, right? Like I remember this, actually, I was having a conversation with my son Drew when he was young. He was telling me a story of this other kid who was always acting out and was starting to get labeled as this bully and was aggressive and violent. And I knew where the kid grew up, and it was in a neighborhood that was really rough. And the kid was just processing what he was being exposed to. He was reacting, he was playing it out. And there's that healing to that of actually playing out a trauma or abuse and working it through, versus what happens when it then becomes labeled and all of a sudden he's the bad kid, right? So this is where it's so important to recognize that these children, they haven't formed identity yet. They're learning, adapting, and processing what they're exposed to.
It's beautiful what you're pointing out. I remember that it reminds me that I never knew this about myself, but I guess I was very quiet as a child. And you could label me with the term shy, but my mother never gave me that label. And I thank her every day for that.
So important.
Yeah. I do
uh,
want to say, so like one of the things that also is important is that, when we're one of the things I also wanted to share is that I know a lot of theta healers and a lot of healers in general, and they actually struggle working with their own children.
yeah.
And this is something that I'm really passionate about because I feel that as parents, we have obviously the most interactions with our children, and we also have the most access to our children. And we have the most access to because we are bonded, we are energetically bonded. our lives are intertwined in almost every single moment of the day, but depending on how little they are. But this energetic bond and this relationship that we have that can extend over large distances when our children get older. We are always going to be bonded with them. We have an amazing ability to also help them grow and change. And I'm going to use the word heal. Um, and so I think part of that comes to this labeling piece. Children can sense when you reject a part of them. And like knowing that when we're working with children, we're not working with them because we are bothered necessarily, right, by who they are or the phase of life that they're in. I think that oftentimes our parenting kind of goes to this place like, um, I'm yelling because you're doing this, right? Like I'm agitated because you are making all of this noise. And there's an expectation like you need to change because I'm bothered. So, one of the mistakes that I think healers and even theta healers or anyone as a parent who's trying to help their child, you can be approaching it from a place of you need a change for me.
Mm.
Again, this really circles back to our earlier conversation about needs, and looking at how your needs were met as a child. But if we can approach it as I see you're struggling and I want to help you, I want to support you. It's a totally different energy, right?
Mm.
And so it's not about changing their personality. It's not, like it's not changing the qualities of who they are. It's really coming from a place like, I love you, I see you. Let's do this together. I'm here. We have a lot more access to be able to work with them. So that's something I'm also really interested in is like, how can I help people? When you come to the basic theta healing class and you have a child that's struggling, or you have even another family member that's struggling, how do we approach it in a different way that actually creates trust and
Mm.
creates a space for creator to do the work as opposed to you putting your projections on your children. So that's something I'm also really passionate about.
Yeah.
And there's a key piece in there too of like you have to trust your child's journey and you have to trust your child's spirit. And when you can find that inner knowing that there's something so much bigger at play than you understand or that you can see, that you can trust and that you can follow, I think it gives us a lot more access to be able to actually use the tools that we are already using on ourselves or already using on our clients and actually helping our own children.
Yeah. Um, I've seen a lot of our students that have families, they come to classes, they work on their stuff, they learn these skills, they feel inspired to start a practice. And many times they don't adjust their parenting. They still go home and are parenting their same traditional style. And one thing I've really observed in watching you as a mom with our kids is how you integrate a lot of the theta tools, the theta skills into your parenting. Um, I remember when our daughter was having a hard time sleeping and she was having nightmares and things, she was really processing a lot. And you would lay with her in the evening and actually introduced her to meditation. You started guiding her in the theta meditation and you would talk and help her process, because what was happening with her dreams was her processing. And you just brought it into more of a ritual and process before she would fall asleep.
I think that I see that with a lot of spiritual people. It's like we work so hard to be in self-development and self-improvement, and we do the work, but we don't know how to bring that to our children,
Yeah.
especially if we were raised in um, deep religious communities, and then we left those communities. It's like the holder isn't there, and we're not sure how to bring in the spiritual traditions. Like so many people I know have lost the spiritual traditions that were actually really important in religions. So I think that being able to create a spiritual culture at home that is loving and warm and joyful and brings in play and all the things that we all love
Yeah.
is like so important.
Yeah. A spiritual community is not just the adults going to workshops. you know, it's it's got the dogs running around. I remember when we went to the training, the shamanic training, and we brought our kids with us, and us and friends of ours with their kids, and we were the only ones with kids there, but the kids were playing around, and we're also using the rattles, and we're in the ceremonies, and that was really cool to hear from Brant Saguna how much he appreciated us bringing the kids. That like that's actually how it is on the tribe. Like the kids are running around, the dogs are running around, everybody's there playing, and they're it's never too early to expose your kids to these spiritual practices. It's amazing how easy it is for children to meditate.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's this idea that like, oh, you can't meditate until you're older when you can sit quietly and patiently. And it's so not true.
Well, and I think that, like, so there's the ritual, and then there's also kids heal and grow through play. And so and this is something that I've actually been learning a lot, is like we can inspire so much in our children through play. So there's a lot here, a lot. And I'm sure we could talk for hours. I know that we're kind of up on the hour. I so enjoyed this conversation. I don't know, Eric, if you have any last words, but um, let's do this again.
Absolutely. So for everybody out there, really hold that beautiful space of holding love for the moms. There's so many families that moms are having to carry the full the full weight and are doing incredible work to really hold that place for their children and to raise their kids. And
Mm,
so I in working with moms, working with women, and I have a few clients right now that they were working with their kids and working through some neurodivergence and autism and ADHD and things like that, and it's beautiful to see how much they love and care.
yeah.
um
I mean, what you're reminding me too, and I guess I was a little short, but children really crave spirituality. They are so open. And like, if you have a child that is struggling in any capacity, it's really important to remember how amazing they are, just because they don't fit into a certain mold that our society expects of our child. They're so intuitive, they're so open. And so creating a some type of container through your rhythms, through the rhythms of your day, bringing in the spiritual, bringing in those aspects, remembering that, like, just remember how stressed we are and how important it is to, yes, come back and have some time to find a container for your own stuff to process, but that, if we can preserve childhood in the best way that we can, um, not having these stressful conversations with our child present, because they're going to be taking that on and processing all of that stress. Um, Nurturing yourself, having self care is really important. And self-care is kind of an overused term these days. But I don't know, Eric, what's a better word for it?
And self-care.
Self-maintenance. It's like essential, at this point. It's like we live in such a crazy time, and our gifts, our intuition, our abilities are expanding at such an incredible rate. Um, it's not just going to a spa. I mean, it's like being practiced with our intuition, with ourselves, with our spiritual practice, with our energies, um, getting out in nature, like all of the things. They need it too. We need it. Um, there's so much beauty and healing available to parents and to children.
I know for me, what really helps me in enjoying and appreciating being a dad is taking time to do belief work on myself around my own childhood and my instinctive responses of parenting, so that I'm not acting out of my subconscious onto my child, and I can be more consciously present. And when I am more present with my child, I get to really just eat them up. It's like really getting to be present and see how magical and how gifted they are, which isn't possible if I'm triggered or reactive or am consumed into the stresses of adulting. So like belief work becomes such a huge key. And what I've really learned from you and what I've really brought in is how responsive they are to the work, that guiding them in meditation, talking about connection to creator, and starting to anchor in these beliefs and actually letting them have experiences that are spiritual of nature, becomes such a huge key for their development, because they are intuitive, they're magical, and they're processing just as much as we are. Yeah, so it's true. We could just keep talking about kids and parents and all day long. It is our life. And so, for all of our listeners, if you are new to the podcast, please subscribe. We have so much coming through. If you want to really learn about theta healing, check out mythiclife.com. We have a lot going on, a lot of really incredible events and healing circles, and join the conversation. We want to hear from you. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, the social medias. We're across all of them, and are really wanting to hold this space to create more conscious parenting and to embrace intuitive development. So thank you so much for joining today, Sarah. I love working with you and exploring this and co-parenting with you.
Yay, good. I love you, honey. This was awesome. And I look forward to doing this again very soon.
Yes.
Thank you all for listening.